But today we've got a half decent day, I think, for most of us. A lot of dry weather out there, decent amount of sunshine. Yes, there's a bit of a brisk breeze blowing in from the southwest, making it feel quite cool, but showers mainly across some western parts of England and Wales, and still across Scotland, falling as snow across the higher ground. There's a lot of snow over the mountains at the moment. Then as we go through this evening and overnight, still keep a few showers feeding into these western parts. Quite a lot of cloud around as well by the end of the night, so that means it's not going to be particularly cold, frost-free essentially. Lows between 4 and 8 degrees. Moving on into Monday, you can see there is more rain looming, along with further strong winds as well, really picking up just ahead of that band of rain. Quite a narrow band though, so it's Cornwall, Pembrokeshire initially that gets the wet weather, along with Northern Ireland. It'll ease a bit further east through the day, but many central and eastern parts of the UK will stay dry, albeit a little bit grey and cloudy. Temperatures between 7 and 9 degrees, about where they should be for the early part of February. But the rest of the week ahead not looking good. More rain for most of us and more gale force winds too.
Whatever your plans this winter, stay one step ahead of the weather. Download the free BBC Weather app on your smartphone or tablet.
This is BBC News with me, Nicholas Owen. It's almost 11:30. Here are the headlines. The Education Secretary, Michael Gove, defends his decision to dismiss the head of Ofsted, the school's inspection agency, following accusations of politics in the appointment process. That criticism comes from the Liberal Democrat Schools Minister, David Laws.
This government is perfectly happy to appoint people, whatever their political background, to important jobs. I appointed Sally in the first place, knowing that she was Labour.
More bad weather is expected to bring further flooding problems. 3 severe flood warnings are currently in place along the Severn estuary near Gloucester. The head of the health watchdog, the Care Quality Commission, says a rift between managers and clinicians is affecting patient care and calls for a radical overhaul of the National Health Service in England. The Department for Education is urging teachers to be tougher on bad behaviour in the classroom. Updated guidance recommends weeding school grounds and tidying classrooms as among possible punishments. Well, let's get more now on that rift which has opened up at the Department for Education. Michael Gove, the Education Secretary, under attack from his own schools minister, the Liberal Democrat David Laws, following the decision to dismiss the chair of the inspection body, Ofsted. Well, sources close to Mr. Laws say he's absolutely furious about what has happened. Well, let's now speak to Sir Malcolm Bruce, the newly elected Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats. Very newly elected. Congratulations on that,
Thank
Sir
you.
Malcolm. Thank you for joining us. Now then, people might say this is all about political bickering and arguing because you Liberal Democrats want to differentiate yourself from the Tories with an election 15 months away.
Well, that seems to be a media spin, but there is a real issue here. Ofsted is the schools inspectorate. It's independent, it inspects all schools. Let's be clear, the coalition, that is both parties in the coalition, have supported academies, supported free schools. We also, of course, support state schools. In this context, Ofsted, the inspectorate, needs to be professional, impartial, and providing the same approach to all schools, whatever their character. The concern here is that somebody who has been deemed to have done that and done extremely well and commanded widespread support has been told she will not be renewed, and that we are told that it's likely to be a Conservative supporter with a very definite political agenda. It's not the appropriate vehicle for politics. That's what the department is for, not the independent inspectorate. And I think that it will undermine people's confidence in the inspectorate and their respect for it. That's not in the best interest of education.
But is there any evidence that Michael Gove is planning to put in a Tory loyalist at the head of Ofsted?
I don't know whether there's evidence or not. There are strong rumours, and I think the simple fact on that is that the test will be when Michael Gove announces that he is going to appoint a replacement. I'd like to think he would consult with David Laws as the schools minister, and that whoever is appointed was one that had the confidence of both of them. That would be a good start. It would also be perhaps a good thing if the Education Select Committee of the House of Commons had some kind of say in it, so that they could give the imprimatur as to whether or not the person was suitably and professionally qualified. But the worry is you have somebody who somehow or other perhaps wants to give the free schools a different treatment from state schools or academies. And really what Michael Gove has got to demonstrate is that he has no such agenda. But by what he's doing at the moment, by not clarifying it, saying he thinks that Baroness Morgan is wonderful, but he's not going to renew her contract, he's left the situation very much open to challenge. And clearly his deputy has every right, I think, to complain that he should be consulted, and B, whoever is appointed should be the person who's appropriate to do an independent, objective job, applying the same criteria across the board to all schools.
Mr. Gove, we haven't got much time, but Mr. Gove says, well, look, we've got other people who are Labour Party supporters and members doing important government jobs, and he did appoint Baroness Sally Morgan in the first place anyway.
Yeah, nobody's complaining that people are appointed who have political loyalties, whether for the government, for any of the parties. The point at the end of the day is in something like Ofsted, which is an independent inspectorate, is that person independent-minded, qualified, and do they command the respect of all the players? That's the real test. And the worry at the moment is somebody who has all of those qualities has been removed, and we are led to believe, or we do not yet know, that the replacement is likely to be somebody who doesn't have those qualities, but is in fact a political appointee with a political agenda. So the inspectorate does not require that treatment.
So Malcolm Bruce, very grateful to you. Thank you very much. Now on BBC News, time for Click.
You're the keeper of people's secrets. The government wants access. Do you give them the keys, or... This week, Click meets the man who's sending a message to the US government. The only one he wants them to read. We're in court with the founder of the email service the FBI wanted to crack to get at Edward Snowden. We'll also show you where you've been recently and how to disappear from Google's location services. And we have the eye-popping headwear that could really turn heads in the coming years. All that plus the latest tech news, and if you needed another reason to get sucked into the programme, we'll show you how to build yourself a black hole in Webscape. Welcome to Click. I'm Spencer Kelly. Can you ever have a completely private email conversation? Well, that's what's been at stake this week in Richmond, Virginia, as the latest skirmish in the fight over privacy unfolds. Now, as with so much in this area, it all goes back to the former NSA contractor Edward Snowden. It was, of course, he who brought to light just how much of our data and communications are sifted by government agencies. Being, of course, aware of this himself, Snowden used a highly encrypted personal email service. And this week, the spotlight shines on the email provider he used, Lavabit. Run by Ladar Leveson, Lavabit's security was so high it was thought near impossible for even government agencies to crack. Last summer, though, Leveson was asked to hand over the keys that Lavabit used to encrypt the data passing through its servers, so the FBI could read the emails of one of its users. That user is believed to have been Edward Snowden. Instead, he shut the service down without warning and issued a statement on his website saying he would not, as he put it, become complicit in crimes against the American people. Leveson is now appealing the government's ruling in what's being seen as one of the most important cases for the future of privacy on the internet. We sent Jen Copestake to Virginia to catch up with him at his appeal hearing.
It's here at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit that Ladar Leveson of Lavabit will have his appeal in front of a panel of 3 judges. He won't hear the decision for several weeks. After the hearing, we head back to Washington, D.C., where Ladar has been staying. What did you think about the hearing today?
Well, on the one hand, I'm certainly happy that I finally had my day in court. I just hope that the justices are able to parse what is a very complex technical question. Hey, Snowden was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
The Lavabit appeal could have far-reaching implications for the future of internet security. Depending on the outcome, it could set a precedent for whether law enforcement agencies can force businesses to hand over encryption keys, unlocking all their customers' data. Encryption keys secure all communications coming in and out of a network, but with the large amount of data now being shared online, the software needs updating to maintain privacy.
What most people don't realize is that the major mail protocols that we use today were created in the 70s, when a half dozen computers were connected on DARPANET, and everybody knew everybody else that was on the internet. And security was never a focus because we didn't think the intelligence agencies were collecting all of the communications going over the internet. Now that that's become clear, it just illustrates the need for us to rethink many of the protocols that we use on the internet.
Ladar has started a new project called Darkmail, which aims to bring encrypted security to everyone, not just cryptographers. Darkmail is a joint venture between Lavabit and Silent Circle, a company specializing in telephony encryption. Silent Circle's president and founder is Phil Zimmermann, an internet legend who designed one of the first privacy protocols, PGP, or Pretty Good Privacy.
I've been worried about surveillance technology for many years, but what we've seen now recently from the revelations from Snowden is that the surveillance state is becoming more powerful than anyone imagined. Everything that we do is being tracked and monitored and recorded, and I think it's bad for civil liberties. I admire what he did. I admire Ladar's decision, and in fact, that's why we thought it would be nice to work together.
If he's not successful in his appeal, Ladar says he may consider taking the case here to the Supreme Court, but that would have huge cost implications. Since shutting down Lavabit, Ladar has relied on crowdfunding to pay for his legal fees.
I've been fortunate that my parents are so proud of me. They've been effectively taking care of me since I shut down my company. And it's allowed me the ability to really become what is almost a full-time activist. It's scary to think that our government is slowly gaining unfettered access to the entire world's communications, and that they're harvesting those communications and storing them for an indefinite period of time. I trust the government when they provide adequate transparency, and I can verify that they are not abusing the authority that they have been given. I do not trust a government that operates in secret.
With more revelations on the scope of American spy programs from Edward Snowden being released almost every week, the debate over internet privacy is only going to get more intense.
The discussion, the debate, has just started. We're going to be discussing these issues for the next 3-4 years. I think there may come a day when the United States is no longer associated with the word freedom in people's minds. The sad thing is that I think I'm too much of an American to abandon my country when that happens.
Jen Copestake in Virginia. Well, Jamie Bartlett is a security and privacy researcher and specialist, and he's agreed to meet me in this very public location for safety. Jamie, hi.
Hello.
Is this something that we ordinary people who have nothing to hide need to be worried about?
I think it's really important that people feel they can communicate securely, whether it's individuals, businesses. It's not just about being able to hide yourself from the government. Being able to communicate safely and securely, browse the internet securely, is incredibly important because there are plenty of third parties out there, nefarious third parties that might want to see what you're doing. More broadly, it's the ability to communicate freely with fellow citizens or whoever you wish is an extremely important right. It's very good for the health of society to be able to do that.
Can we assume it is now impossible to have a conversation away from prying eyes?
I mean, I think it's always safe to assume there's a possibility that your online communications are being monitored, but actually there are a lot of pretty good, pretty secure ways that you can communicate with other people. For example, the use of PGP encryption. It's relatively simple, it's used by a large number of people, and it's very, very hard to crack. So while there are always ways of security services trying to get in, and we don't know exactly what they can and can't do, even with these revelations by Edward Snowden, it's not quite as easy as people think to monitor everything. But equally, there are ways of evading it.
Does it seem to you that since all these revelations have started surfacing, more and more ordinary people have decided to take action to develop anti-surveillance methods?
In 1991, what we saw was the launch of something called the crypto wars, of citizens trying to evade surveillance, counter-surveillance by the people. And I think we're entering into a second crypto war. Over the last 12 months or so, there's been a pretty dramatic increase in both sort of technical software developers and ordinary citizens figuring out ways of trying to evade surveillance, the sort of citizen counter-surveillance movement. There's been a growth in crypto parties around the world where people learn how to use PGP encryption or browse the net anonymously. And there's very interesting new software being developed for example, a secure alternative to Skype called Jitsi. There's new ways of being able to send text messages more anonymously. And that includes Chinese dissidents, ordinary citizens who just want to make sure that their communications are secure. But of course, exactly the same tools and techniques are going to be used by serious and organised criminals. So that's the great challenge that we face.
Okay, Jamie, thank you very much for your time. If anyone asks, we weren't here. Okay. Now, of course, it's not just governments who are after your data. Sometimes it's companies which are providing you a service and which you've agreed can track you in the first place. Take a look at this. The Lunar New Year is the reason behind the world's biggest annual migration. Gongxi Fatsai, by the way. And these coloured lines show the movement of hundreds of millions of people over this period. Their locations have been tracked because they use the largest search engine in China, Baidu. And over here, if you've allowed Google to access the location data from your smartphone, the same thing is happening to you all the time. Take a look at this. If you go into Google Dashboard, you can access any location data that's been collected on you. For example, here's what I got up to during our visit to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas a few weeks ago. You can cycle through each day to see, for example, where the boss went skiing earlier this month, or you can chart my driving trip out of Las Vegas and into the desert. Pretty cool. Or spooky, depending on your point of view. Now, of course, you may very well know that you've signed up for something like this, but let's be honest, sometimes apps can install on our phones and we agree to the permissions without really realizing the consequences. Fortunately, you do have control over what Google can see of your location. You can switch it off entirely through the dashboard or delete any or all of your history. Anyway, next up, it's a look at this week's tech news. And more from Edward Snowden first, with revelations that British intelligence agencies have been snooping on users of YouTube, Facebook and Blogger. The leaks, published by America's NBC network, suggest that in 2012, GCHQ monitored Facebook likes and comments that weren't supposed to be public. Facebook says it has since encrypted much of its data. All three companies have denied granting GCHQ access to their servers. It's also emerged that both the NSA and GCHQ made use of information leaked from mobile phone applications, including Angry Birds, many of which send out the handset's ID and location on a regular basis. GCHQ hasn't commented, but some hackers have, by defacing the Birds website. Orange has become the first major operator to include Europe-wide calls and data use in a monthly subscription plan. The move is expected to be copied by other EU operators after regulators promised to stamp out roaming charges by 2016. It may not save customers much cash though. The cheapest of the two tariffs starts at €90 per month. Last year, UK operator 3 did something similar across 11 countries, including the US, reporting a 10-fold increase in data use in those countries. And finally, another step forward in the world of 3D printing, perhaps the ultimate one, as Stratasys unveiled the first machine that can print objects made of mixed and multicoloured materials. The company claims that the $330,000 machine will halve the time it takes to create prototypes by using triple jetting, mixing differing amounts of colour dyes, rubber and plastic simultaneously to create the desired object. Last week we had another reminder of the heat and hype surrounding wearable displays when one American startup raised $250,000 in just one day to crowdfund its unique headset. And with mounting speculation that Google might finally be ready to release its own glass eyewear, Dan Simmons has been looking at the pros and cons of looking like a cyborg.
Heads up. Eyewear is the focus for many developers at the moment, most of whom are popping tiny screens into headsets. But one startup is hoping we'll look at things in a very different way. Inside, the player is actually looking at 2 million mirrors that flip around to bounce light straight into the eye. Special lenses help bring that image into focus, so there's no need for a screen. The result, it's claimed, is a pixelless, stunning image, although there's still a year or so of testing to be done. Using more conventional means, Sony has had a home theatre headset available since 2012, but its latest version tracks your head movements, courtesy of a gyroscope and accelerometer in the back, so wearers can look around the scene. For dedicated gamers, the Oculus Rift headset goes even further with a 360-degree game world fed through 2 HD screens. And then there are headsets made for the real world. This pair from Recon hits the market in the next few months, making use of specific apps for each situation, linking up to the net to overlay real-time data.
OK Glass, get directions to Covent Garden Station.
Perhaps the most famous of these is Google Glass. Still in beta testing, the voice-activated specs hook up to your smartphone, offering a heads-up map with directions, web searches, or to share pictures or videos that you might take using the built-in camera. But why not simply use your smartphone?
So phones are quite antisocial when you think about it. If you want to do an activity, you have to look down, take it out of your pocket, put it back in. Whereas having a headset, it allows you the freedom to actually just get on with your life. You see something that's interesting to you, you can have a photo taken, you can have a conversation with someone and engage with them without having to fact-find by sneaking around in your pocket.
But is it cool to look like this?
The problem is it looks quite, I don't want to say the word ugly, but it is very much kind of unaesthetic. People don't want to wear things that are obviously technology. They want something that's sleek. They want sunglasses or a pair of normal glasses that incorporates technology in a more easy-to-use way.
Sony is experimenting with this pair that adds info to what you can see while watching TV, if you're willing to look like Jason Bradbury for a bit.
Sony likes the idea of not having to look at a second device, maybe a mobile phone, but rather letting fans just watch the game. You don't take your eyes off the screen because all the information you might need, like the goal scoreline or tweets that come up from other fans, appear right before your eyes.
The company is adding more functions and claims its design makes me look so much better than Google's.
And with the discrete way that we display information internally so that only the wearer sees it, there's no reason for you to have to constantly move your eyes up and away and break that eye contact and ultimately cause a distraction to your audience if you're speaking to someone.
The lack of arms on this prototype, of course, would probably prove even more distracting. And perhaps the most futuristic vision is offered by these space glasses from Meta that create virtual interfaces like a laptop or model for the user to manipulate with their bare hands. Only the wearer can see what they're doing, which to the rest of us could make them look particularly stupid.
Dan Simmons. And as if they heard Dan coming, take a look at this.
Google has released some snaps of frames it will offer for sale to use with its Glass product, including these sleek pairs of shades which will sell for $150. So even if that doesn't convince you that headsets can look cool, at least no one will recognise you while you're wearing them.
And now it's time for our ever sensible look at all that's best on the web. Here comes Kate Russell with Webscape.
World of Warplanes is a free-to-play dogfighting sim that delivers adrenaline-pumping, massively multiplayer team action in an authentic lineup of over 100 different aircraft from the golden era of military aviation. Upgrades and customisations can be earned over time, or you can pay with real-world cash for some in-game currency if you're too impatient to wait. Flying anything from the biplanes of the 1930s up to the first jet planes of the 1950s. This is fast and furious dogfighting fun, where teams of 15 players on each side are pitted against each other in a battle to the death. There are already millions of pilots signed up on the site, so you'll never be short of someone to shoot out of the skies. It is a hefty old download, but well worth the wait, as you'll be out on the aerial battlefield in no time once installed, as the learning curve is very comfortable. The YouTube channel is a great place to head while you wait for the download, where they've done a really nice job of presenting tutorials and guides with a historic newsreel feel to get you in the mood. Cameras in modern smartphones are now such good quality they can realistically replace expensive digital cameras. But if you want all the specialist shooting styles and features, you're going to need a folder full of apps as well. But not if you download a better camera for Android, which gives you all the multi-functions of a high-end camera through one central dashboard. This app is all about capturing the moment. There are no post-production filters or touch-up tools in here. It doesn't even save your photos inside the app. They just go straight to the camera roll like normal photos. There are loads of great features, including burst photography, night shot, panoramas, and HDR or high dynamic range, with no lengthy processing time required. While the app is free, some of the features included are in trial mode, so you'll have to pay eventually if you want to keep them. For today's internet generation, it's all about being disposable. If you want the Snapchat appeal in the form of social media platform Twitter, then you'd come up with QuickDesk. This completely anonymous social platform is a way of sending messages of up to 300 characters out into the great unwashed internet. After typing it up, you select how long the message will remain in the system for before it self-destructs for 1, 10 or 100 days from when you hit send. The public timeline is hidden, so you can't just browse through the post. You'll have to find a hashtag to query instead. If all this makes you ask, why? Well, the only sensible answer is probably, why not? It's actually been launched as a piece of conceptual art by Irish photographer Kevin Abosh. Not everything interesting online needs a purpose.
60-second adventures in astronomy.
How do you make a black hole?
Apart from the obvious answer, very carefully, that is the topic of this week's Video of the Week from the Open University's 60-Second Adventures In series, which are well worth checking out on their YouTube channel.
Chandrasekhar calculated that if a star is big enough, when its fuel runs out, there is nothing to stop gravity from making its core collapse to create a black hole. Unfortunately for Chandrasekhar, his contemporaries, like Sir Arthur Eddington, just didn't believe him. But it turns out he was right, and in 1983 he eventually won a Nobel Prize for it.
From dark mail to black holes in just under 25 minutes. Don't say we're not good to you. And of course, Kate's links are available at our website if you miss them, bbc.co.uk/click, the address you need. And if you have an opinion on anything you've seen today, and I suspect you just might, we'd love to hear it. Click at bbc.co.uk is our email address. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Google+ too. That is it for now though. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Hello. Well, we've got some fairly bright skies out there today for most of us, a chance to draw breath before the next battering over the next few days. Still fairly breezy through the rest of this afternoon, but a decent amount of sunshine in most places, just 1 or 2 showers here or there, and temperatures between 6 and 10 degrees, about right really for the early part of February. Overnight tonight, changes fairly slow. Initially some clear spells, but they'll tend to fill in with cloud as the night wears on. Eventually some rain looming in the west, but pretty much frost-free because of a continuing breeze and those cloudy skies as well. So there will be some rain around tomorrow, confined mainly to Northern Ireland through the early parts of the day, but sitting across western parts of Wales and southwest England, areas that really don't need it, of course, and eventually fringing into those western parts of Scotland too. Central and eastern parts of England, though, hanging on to a dry day. Temperatures about the same as today, some fairly brisk winds picking up ahead of that rain. But the rest of the week ahead, not looking great. There'll be more heavy rain at times, more gale force winds, and as a result, probably more problems.
This is BBC News. I'm Nicholas Owen. The headlines at midday. The Education Secretary, Michael Gove, defends his decision to remove the head of Ofsted, the school inspection agency, in the face of criticism by a minister in his own department, the Liberal Democrat David Laws.
This government is perfectly happy to appoint people, whatever their political background, to important jobs. I appointed Sally in the first place, knowing that she was Labour.
A high spring tide causes the River Parrett to burst its banks, sending further floodwater onto the Somerset levels. And water levels peak on the River Severn in Gloucestershire after a tidal surge. 3 severe flood warnings remain in place in the country.
I'm Sophie Long, live in Minsterworth, where the River Severn has overspilled, causing thousands of gallons of water to pour over the banks into the properties below.
A rift between National Health Service managers and clinicians is affecting patient care, according to the chairman of the health regulator. Also in the next hour, calls for a return to traditional punishments in schools. The Education Secretary wants teachers to reintroduce measures such as lines and litter picking to discipline students. Good afternoon. Welcome to BBC News. The Education Secretary, Michael Gove, has defended his decision to dismiss the chair of the inspection body, Ofsted. Yesterday, Baroness Sally Morgan, a Labour peer, said she was the victim of a determined effort to appoint more Conservatives to top public jobs. Her dismissal has caused a rift at the Department for Education, with the Liberal Democrat Schools Minister David Laws said to be absolutely furious at attempts to politicise Ofsted.